we want to lean into the rivalry aspect in the beginning. We don't expect it to all be kumbaya, best friends right away, and we're not going to tell fans that that's how they should feel immediately. And so, we're excited to see the intensity and the passion of the Brazilian community come out and defend their home ground in a sense against the North teams as they go in there and they fight for that single spot to attend first stand.
I don't think I can get it to work exactly the way I want to, so we'll just have to have your handsome face up front.
Okay. Right. Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay. So yeah. First of all, just hi Mark, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I'm Martin from Strafe Esports. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's nice to meet you and happy to chat. It's a bit of a sprint to get everything ready in time for our kickoff, but I think we're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I imagine. Okay, let's start off. I'm just out of curiosity. I want to ask, how closely will the two conferences work together moving forward outside of cross-conference events and so on?
So there's the obvious overlap moments where we compete against each other, and then obviously the LTA as an overarching brand will be what represents us on the international stage. But on a week-to-week level, myself and the LTA South teams working at Riot and stuff, we are step in step every single part of the journey. So if we're doing an activation up here, we're making content up here, what's going on in the South? Is there opportunities to share this stuff and combine together, or is it more like a conference-specific thing or even a language-specific thing? So we're constantly checking. We want feature parity as much as we can have it across the product. So we talked about the LTA Fantasy coming. That's something that's for both products, and so obviously or both conferences, so we're working together to make sure that it makes sense for both of our audiences and that we have an experience that makes sense, given that these things can take on different forms in different regions and communities. So we're always checking to make sure that this is something that makes sense for both, and where it doesn't, that's where we can break parity. And that's kind of our approach for everything, and we're not going to get it perfect all the time, but that's our general philosophy.
Okay, right, awesome. Now, it's been announced recently that the first LTA cross-conference event is actually going to be held in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, right? So I'm wondering if you can get me through the thought process behind the decision to have Brazil host for the first time.
The biggest one was just that we wanted to have that event down there because it's going to be the first opportunity for this cross-conference moment. We thought that they would be a crowd that would be very, very, very excited. We haven't seen this level of competition before, and I think we want to lean into the rivalry aspect in the beginning. We don't expect it to all be kumbaya, best friends right away, and we're not going to tell fans that that's how they should feel immediately. And so we're excited to see the intensity and the passion of the Brazilian community come out and defend their home ground in a sense against the North teams as they go in there and they fight for that single spot to attend first stand. So we think that will lead to some really fun moments, a lot of passion, and we want to capitalize on that as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Brazilian fans are nothing if not passionate.
Yeah, so we're expecting a lot of fans to show up that day.
Things better get crazy.
Yeah.
Now, actually, first stand for next year, 2026, will actually be taking place in Brazil too, right? So is further integration of Brazil or South America in general part of their integration into the global ecosystem for League? Is that part of the objective for the LTA?
It's obviously partially for the LTA, but also I think for the global team and why they're looking at Brazil. It's just a community that they've had their eye on for a while and trying to figure out how to get an event in Brazil. And so I think this is a great opportunity that they saw to put an event for the global scale in Brazil. And the LTA, we're going to support it the way that we support all global events on the regional level. All regional teams always lean in. But it wasn't like this was a specific LTA initiative. But I do think we want the Brazilian community to know that Riot Games does want to continue hosting events down there. They're an incredible community, and this was a good opportunity to put an event down there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the last time Brazil hosted an international event, but by the time first 10 hits next year, it's going to have been 9 years. So
Oh,
I'm sure they'll be happy about it. Um, Now, speaking of 2026, obviously it promises to be a very exciting year for the Americas, right? Um, could you give me some insight into what would you expect your role to be for the two international events that are going to be held in the region?
yeah. So we don't there's the global team and the regional teams,
Yep.
obviously, and for the most part, the global teams handle the global events and then work with the regional teams to support and figure out what makes the most sense in some scenarios. But we all on the regional side, regardless of where the event takes place, always are participating in these anyways. Our talents and producers and people are all working together on the English feed coverage of Worlds or something like that. So we're always integrated with the global team and working alongside them. When it's on your home turf, maybe it's a little bit more, but it's not substantially like a totally different scope. It's not like we are producing the events ourselves on the Americas team. It's still largely the global team handling that. So my role is mostly going to be to help global answer questions, support them, what works and resonates in our communities and where, and kind of try and maybe point them in the right direction if they have questions. But they are the ones ultimately leading the charge on that event.
Right. So it's not the LTA being particularly involved with an international event just because it happens to take place in North America or Brazil.
Yeah, it would be a huge burden to throw on regional
No,
teams. Like now, also produce two more international events, and yeah. So no. We it's still mostly the global team, but like I said, the regional team support.
yeah. But speaking of burden, I know naturally it doesn't really fall onto you like you just said, but do you still expect to maybe run into some challenges for what's going to be such a loaded year in 2026 for the region, just a year after the inauguration of the LTA? Seems like.
I'm more excited than worried, I guess I would say. I think it's super cool that the Americas are going to host 3 of the next 6 international tournaments. We have MSI this year, First Stand next year, and Worlds next year. And so we'll also then have all 3 of the international events across the year as well. So you get to see all 3 levels of scope as they kind of ramp up. So I think it's really cool for fans of the Americas to get these different opportunities to see things in person and see how they kind of scale up over time. So I think it's really cool. I do think it is, like you said, it's something where we're going to have to make sure that on the LTA side, I think our responsibility, if anything, is to make sure that the local communities are really engaged in esports already. We're kind of setting the stage in a sense of making sure that the North American audience is super excited, the Brazilian audience is super excited. So when we host these events, that it's really easy for the global teams to tap into the region. And I think that's, if anything, the biggest responsibility we have is to make sure that the LTA succeeds on its own right. And so that way when global events start showing up and popping up, they're already really, really excited.
Yeah. All right. Now I want to talk a little bit about the fans because at first when the LTA was announced, fans of the CB Law and the LLA they weren't entirely pleased with the news of the merger. Feared maybe that their leagues or teams would lose their identity, perhaps. Now, some time has passed since the announcement, and sentiments do appear to have changed somewhat. I'm sure some of those feelings still remain, but there's a lot of excitement about the start of the new league down in South America. Now, this is going to be a long-winded question, but
It's okay.
this could well be due to hype and just this long period of esports inactivity that we've had. It could also be a reflection on the job that your team has done to make sure the LTA heads in a direction that everyone can feel comfortable with, right? So I'm curious what it would be that you attribute this change of sentiment to.
Well, we would love to take all the credit and say it's all us. We've done such an amazing job of turning people's opinion around, but I don't think that's necessarily completely the case. I do think we're doing our best to communicate with fans, show that we're still doing everything we can to make sure that they're excited, that the formats are going to be cool, the competition's going to be cool, the broadcast is going to be cool, all these things that they've kind of grown to know and love within each specific region, whether it's Brazil, LATAM, or North America. Despite the changes, that it's still going to be a really great time. And so as you put out content, communication, explain these things, I think people naturally warm up to it. I think it's also very understandable that it does just take time. And I think that's part of it too, is, we do everything we can, but some part of it is just There's going to be the initial shock of hearing the news because it is, we're not shying away from the fact that these are big changes. We felt like they were necessary. We've done everything we can to explain why we felt like we had to make these changes to get buy-in so that people understand it's not just this like random decision that's been made. Because like you said, there is a concern of losing their identity and the culture and their teams and the things that make them fans. And we want to preserve that. So there's the initial kind of shock of the news, kind of the concern, the worry that comes up. And then hopefully over time, as we explain things, as we communicate, as we start the product actually starting up, because we still haven't technically even started in a sense. So we hope that as we start to deliver more and more, that the worries fade away and it just returns back to excitement and hype for the product.
Mm-hmm. Could you maybe on that note talk to me a little bit about the challenges that you first faced running into these sentiments?
Yeah, I think there's two kinds of challenges we face, and we're always going to try and learn from them and do better. One is myself and everyone who was previously on the North American, the LCS side, and then the CBLOL side. We're having to come together and really start working together and figuring out how the teams operate, where the similarities are, where the differences are, and kind of behind the scenes and internally how to work together and make sure we're not making mistakes or oversights or anything like that. So that's part of it, is just figuring out how to work with each other. And then the other one is, understanding where there are differences, how to make those differences work without, if someone is like seeing the two different communities and how we're talking to them, that it's not, that there's good intention behind it. Like I appear on podcasts all the time for the North. I used to be talent. I used to be all these things that I'm very happy to hop on a camera, hop on a call and do these sorts of things. And so we're trying to, if you saw in the announcement video, we have Igor, Korea in the South, who is going to start showing up a little bit more on camera and take a little bit of that role sometimes while talking to the Brazilian community, because we want people to understand that there are Brazilian leaders making decisions with us, with me, and it's not just me. So we're trying to make sure that all the communities feel represented and heard, and they understand that the two teams are working together. And I think that's a big one, is just figuring out, for me personally, like what can I say to the Brazilian community when I show up to make them understand that like I am not just North American MarkZ that I had been previously, but I understand that there's a new scope and communities that I have to learn to reach. So there's a personal learning on my side too of how to communicate with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, staying on the subject of South America just for a little bit longer, there's always been a reasonable amount of interest in the LCS and North American League of Legends from South America, right? Now this year, teams from the LTA North will end up being the competition for teams from the LTA South, right? So do you expect viewership from South America for North American games to increase, especially even having Lion there as well in the mix? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I was just listening to some podcasts where people were talking about this idea of like, what does success look like for us? And we've seen a similar trend with our own numbers, that there is interest in the kind of each other's conferences, but it's not necessarily like we think everyone has to watch everything that's going on, because that's a lot of League of Legends to watch across a single day. It's going to be starting, I'll use the Pacific time zones, but it's going to start at 8 a.m. for us and run through probably 5 p.m. So your whole day would be League if you're trying to watch both conferences all the way through. And our expectation is not to push that pressure onto people. We want to design content around the idea that it's going to connect people, that they're going to have, they can if they want to watch those, but it's not the expectation that like every single fan needs to be there. But for fans who are going to be more invested, they're going to have that opportunity to watch both these and have a connection that didn't really exist before, in the sense that our products would only ever meet up at an international competition. And now there's these stages kind of before that where these clashes happen. And if you want to get invested before those clashes happen, you can, but it's not a prerequisite, I don't think. And so we saw last year when we had Baiano co-streaming the LCS then, we had some portion of Brazilian viewership that we saw on our own official channels. And a part of that migrated to him because it was now in Portuguese and they could actually follow it in an easier way. And we think that'll continue even more now, hopefully, with the fact that the two products are even more combined. So we saw some good trends initially, and we've kind of doubled down on that approach.
And do you expect that to also be the case the other way around? So for North American fans to start watching more Brazilian League of Legends, South American League of Legends?
I hope so, and I think it will be the case. We had the America's Tier 2 event And I'm not quite sure if you followed that, but we had the top teams from Tier 2 and NACL go down to Brazil to compete against the top teams from the LLA and CBLOL academies. And it was really hype. It was really, really cool. And I think it showed that there is this kind of interest. A lot of Tier 2 viewers are some of the most diehard that there are if you're watching Tier 2 League of Legends. And we saw already that some of the NA fans were like, whoa, we thought we'd go in there and crush them. We thought that they had this perception of how the competition was going to go, and it didn't go that way. And now, as we gear up on the Tier 1 stage to do something similar, it's kind of repeating the process, I think, but you have the kind of hardcore fans who did watch that moment and go, whoa, we should be more careful as we go into the South and get ready for that competition. And I think maybe for opening weekend, we're really focused on activating the local audiences and gearing them up for the cross-conference competition. But I expect once you start having these clashes, interviews, cross-conference content, and all these things to start getting people more and more invested in the other storylines, that will deepen on the North American side as well, watching the South American teams.